All right, well, welcome back to the iWealth podcast where we talk about all things financial. And today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about kids living at home for forever and ever and ever and ever, living in so much cooler online down in the basement, right?
Yeah, I love my kids, but they got to leave someday.
At some point, they got to pack it up. So the question is this, is as a parent, your 25-year-old son or daughter still hanging out at the house, how does that affect your retirement plan, and what can be done within all of the different shades of gray of making that, to kind of talk through worst case and best case scenario? And
there's so many dynamics here, not just financially, the emotional side of it. I mean, you have your daughter and my kids, and it's how do you say no to them and that kind of thing. And I've seen it all in the last 25 years where kids never leave, and mom and dad just eventually get to the point where they know that that's the case. I just think it's it can be very significant when you look at the dollars and cents of feeding and car insurance and the cell phone bill and all that kind of stuff that kind of comes into it. There just needs to be an end date at some point where they take some responsibility for that, because I've had conversations with clients like, listen, are you willing to work another 5 years? Are you going to go until you're 70 instead of 65? Because you're making that sacrifice to take care of your children. And that might be the right answer. Yep. For them, it might be the right answer.
Yeah, for sure.
But for other people, it's not. And it's maybe a reality check of hey, we've got to have a conversation here with our kids. It's just, and with COVID and the pandemic and stuff, there's just some stuff that has come up where that's just reality. We saw it in 08 and 09. I saw it in 02 and 03 with the different recessions we were in. Yeah. That's just kind of a natural part of life. But it can have a negative effect on the retirement plan because you're saving money to get to that day. I mean, we've had conversations about how, you get out of college and then you get married and then you have kids and then you buy a house or whatever order that's in these days. Yeah. And then eventually you wake up and you're 50 and you're like, man, I got to put some money away for retirement or more if I'm going to get there. Yep. And then all of a sudden the kids are still there and there's still these expenses and you're going on vacation, so they need to go too. And all these things kind of happen. And I've just seen it have a draining effect on the retirement bucket. People just need to be aware of that, and then they can make their own decision. I'm not going to get into the Dr. Phil moment of what's right or wrong in the situation, but money-wise, it can have a big effect.
Have you ever, in the 20-some years of doing this, had to actually have that conversation between the parents and maybe the son that's hanging out in the basement all the time? Like, hey, mom and dad are going to have to work for an extra 3 years or 4 years just because of the financial drain. Right. Or is that even a conversation that you'd be willing to have? Because that's awkward. It's socially awkward.
I think I'd be willing to have it. Yep. The good news is I have not had it.
You have not had it.
I've had a ton of conversation with mom and dad to get them kind of coach, go back and get them, and they go back and have that conversation. I haven't had to. I'd be willing to have that because it's just, if the truth will set you free, if it's the truth, it's the truth, right? And so having that conversation. But we've had a lot of family meetings where those conversations are about when dad and mom aren't here, these are these intentions that they have and those type of things. And then if you want that child to remain at home, how are you going to provide for them if you're not there? I mean, that's the second part of it. Like, if you're okay with it, that's fine. Yep. But now financially, you're on the hook, like, forever maybe. So are you financially set to take care of that child when you're not here
especially
someday?
If there's a disability.
Right.
That's the other thing too, is oftentimes when you hear about kids that, if there's a disability in the family for that young, or that not sibling, but for your child, right, that maybe that's another reason why it's okay for them to stay. Right. So. Yeah. It's funny, but not funny because the reality is there, and it happens a lot. I see it a lot, and sometimes I see the frustrations on mom and dad's face. Yeah. About we had to go get a job and we had to get our own apartment and those type of things, and so and I've seen a lot of success where they've finally had the conversation and the child grows up and has a good family and things work out well. I've seen good things happen there too. So it's not all doom and gloom. So I guess the most interesting thing that comes out of this conversation is being able to run the scenario for the parents. So having mom and dad come in, if you're sitting out there, Brad will happily sit with you and do the work up to figure out, okay, well, if son or daughter is in the house, right, maybe it really is a 3-year trade-off that you are working for 3 years longer by choosing to have the child come with you on vacation and still paying for food for them to eat, and then emotionally wrapping your head around the fact that it will be 3 more years of work to have the kids stay in the house. That's a hard conversation.
Right. It definitely is. And it's a budget thing, right? I mean, it's another $500 a month to have your child in the house.
Yeah.
How long do you need to budget for that in the retirement then too? An extra $500 a month to be able to retire on time. Not only the sacrifice today, but down the road, depending on how long that, that child's going to be there. So it's
luckily, at the end of the day, it isn't always about the money part of it.
Right.
But it is interesting to understand that, because it gives you the tools to think through, how do I want to handle this the right way? And it may not be the right thing to kick them out, but it is good to have the tools to make a decision that's a wise decision.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it.
Just understand the sacrifice that you're making, and then you choose to do what you want to do. Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see you back here next time. If you have a kid that's living in your basement, go ahead and write that up in the comments below, and we'll get back to you at some point, or make a podcast about your kid if you want. All right, we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Matt.